Dr. Hackett, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Denise, for having me. I really am excited about the conversation.
I am happy that you still have a smile on your face. So,
It's forced, but no, it's always,
yeah,
you have to
yeah,
keep a smile on your face and to keep moving.
I know. I'm glad you're saying that. So, can you briefly share your journey to what led you to become a chief equity, a diversity equity officer at the Department of Labor?
Sure. I think I got my start. I'm from South Carolina, so I'm a down home country girl. And I was always put in these classes where I was the only Black, maybe one or two or maybe three of my classmates, and we were the only. And so it kind of led me to this place of understanding that there was a difference, right? Went to a college that was PWI, which is a predominantly white college. And again, in those atmospheres, you begin to advocate for yourself. So after undergrad, I immediately took a position at a university in the Multicultural Affairs office. And that started my kind of place in really advocating for students who were the minority within the higher education institutions. And later on, decided I wanted to get a law degree. After, of course, I had a master's in public affairs, but I was appointed by Governor Northam in the Commonwealth of Virginia as the inaugural Deputy Chief Diversity Equity Officer, where we elevated and pushed for the One Virginia Plan, the first of its kind. There had never been a cabinet level Chief Diversity Officer for a state up until that time. And then that led me to my position with the Department of Labor, where I was appointed by President Biden as the inaugural Chief Diversity Officer, working for all workforce across the United States of America.
Dr. Hackett, you're saying that your previous position. Tell us, does that mean that you got caught up into this
Right. So
situation
no,
we're in right now?
Thankfully,
Okay.
I was a appointee. So I was a appointee from President Biden, political appointee. Therefore, I did not get caught up in what's happening now. I actually
Okay.
resigned my position effective January 20th because I worked at the pleasure of the president. Joseph Biden, I resigned my position. So I know a lot of colleagues who were career diversity leaders or worked in the diversity offices. And I think that's also something that has to be clarified, is that the ones that they were, you know, terminating or putting on leave were not the ones necessarily leading the initiatives. They were working in these offices, doing some of the initiatives because of the former president's executive orders.
And so when we talk about this anti DEI stance associated with this Make America Great Again movement, and Mr. Trump is President Trump is very adamant, about and has pushed to get rid of all of the DEI programs across the board. What do you think that means for this, particularly for the well-being of the 61 Americans with disabilities, but also for African Americans, Hispanics, women? Um, what have you thought about what that impact is going to be?
I have. I at the beginning last month and some of this month, I lost a lot of sleep because I think about the people whose lives will be, negatively impacted for the removal of DEIA programs. And what I've been saying over and over is that we have to understand what DEIA is and what DEIA is not. A lot of times people are trying to pigeonhole it to DEIA equals Black communities or DEIA equals Black people. And that's exactly opposite of what it is. DEIA initiatives is all inclusive, which is the I part of the DEIA. It's all inclusive, and it is my belief, because of the years, over almost 25 years of experience doing this work, I know that most Americans, most residents in America, fall under one of the categories of DEIA. And you've mentioned some of it, which is the disability communities, women, LGBTQ. Let's talk about women when you have just recently had a baby, you're going back into the workforce. We want to nurse our children, but they're not, you know, places where you can go and pump. And so you have the Pump Act. So these things are all inclusive of veterans. And so when I think about disability communities, they're often left out anyway. And so I wonder if people have really read the initiatives that were implemented during the Biden-Harris administration to really have a clear understanding of all that was accommodated and helped so many people across our country.
You know, there's a Supreme Court case happening right now. And so the charge or the allegation from Trump and so many others is that these DEI programs become anti-white, anti-male, let me change that differently, say that differently, anti-white male programs. And so it appears that there's this idea that anytime you hire someone who is the other, that you're taking a job away from them, the white male. And how did we get here? I mean, did you find that to be the case? And, I don't know how you would respond to that, but I'm curious because this is where we are. I mean, it's basically white males saying that they're being discriminated against because of all of these DEI programs.
So to answer your question, no, I never found that to be the case where it was an anti-white male environment. It's almost impossible because the white male or Caucasian male typically has a dominant presence in everything that we do in this country. So for me, it is definitely a false statement, and it definitely was not happening. What I would say is there were even Caucasian or white males who benefits and benefited from DEIA programming and initiatives. And I also want to say it was not just hiring and recruitment. It was also programs to help communities which are marginalized. And some of those communities include, let's talk about disabilities, because when you think about disabilities, a lot of times individuals are only looking for a visible disability, but there are a lot of invisible disabilities like mental wellness or health wellness that we have to consider, which are considered disabilities. So let's talk about some of conditions that may need an accommodating schedule, which will be a medical condition. It could be a person as they get older, they have a weaker bladder, and so they need more break times. That is an accommodation. That is DEIA. That is the accessibility part of DEIA. There are also things you have to look at. If a person has maybe they have a sight issue, and you need to provide them a software program on their work computer that reads the text instead of having them to have to always try to make the script larger. That is also folks in the disability demographic group that we are considering. So it is not taken away from one ethnic group or demographic group and given to another. It literally is expanding the reach so that we are encompassing all of the groups that we have in our most diverse country.
I know that we came from an era where, in order to um, create diversity, there was this term called quotas, and that became illegal, right? And so it's not like, you have 10 jobs and you want to make sure that you have, certain people represented in those jobs based upon whatever their diverse uh, position may be. Um, but we don't do quotas anymore, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And let me just be clear. Um, I think that, as I look historically, I think the nation has been trying to find solutions, right? Because we recognize that this country, one of the benefits, one of the superpowers of our country is our diversity. And we're becoming more diverse every single day. And so as you have more diversity, you have to be more inclusive. From the onset of our country, from the forefathers of the United States, the Constitution as we know it, there was only one demographical group in the room signing the Constitution, and that was white male. So the only perspective that most laws have been written, the systems that were created from the perspective, from the lens of the white or Caucasian male. And so as we've become more diverse, we've been trying to, I think the country has been trying to find solutions, and quotas were one of those things, but it's definitely not something that happens now. And honestly, the way that we have implemented DEIA across the board during the Biden Harris administration has been very inclusive and very equitable, to ensure that we're trying to not overlook any demographic groups. Matter of fact, one of the studies that we did, and mind you, everything that we did at the Department of Labor was data driven. We had to have metrics. We had to have data to show why we needed to address a certain barrier that we were able to identify. And one of the metrics showed that we had a significant amount of white women supervisors and not enough white males in a certain sub agency. And so we addressed that because the data doesn't lie. So yeah, it's not about
So
quote.
how did you, I mean, you didn't fire the the white women and hire, I mean, how did you address it?
No, you do not fire. You don't fire. You don't roll back. What you do is establish a metric from where you're going to go from that point on. So what we end up doing is creating a career, a clarification of career pathways for promotion within. So
Mhm.
there was an understanding of what our employees needed to do in order to be promoted. And so we also created mentorship programs so that if someone was interested, maybe they were interested and they never had the conversation and say, hey, I'm interested in being a supervisor. And so we wanted to make sure that the information was, again, a wider net, and not just I'm telling my friend, I'm telling the person that I'm closest to, because that tends to be what happens when we're thinking about hiring and promotions. I want to promote Bob because we play golf together. And so what we did was create documents that really, and programs to help individuals have internal promotion ladders.
So, I really wish we had much more time to talk about this because I have a bunch of questions to ask, but we are about out of time. But where do you see this going? I mean, I know there've been a lot of lawsuits filed,
Mhm.
temporary restraining orders now. I think they're up to about 100
Mhm.
cases in courts.
Yeah.
I know that nonprofits and other organizations are trying to figure out, that identify with a certain um, uh, group, whether you're black, female, whatever, LBGTQ. They're trying to
Mhm.
figure out, now what's going to impact our funding. Corporations now are, across the board are saying they're no longer going to have these DEI programs. Are we, even though some have said we're calling it something else. But anyway, that's another conversation. But where do you think this is going? And it's really got people nervous, that are trying to serve the community.
Yeah, as it should. I think there's a reason for nervousness. Again, I've been doing this work since it's been called multicultural affairs, and then urban affairs, and then
Right.
intercultural affairs. So I've seen the iteration of this work. And what I know for sure is this work, whether it's called civil rights, whether it's called Americans with disabilities, or accommodations, this work is resilient. It will not, it cannot stop. Why? Because our country continues to be diverse. And so we have to find ways of inclusivity. And if we don't find them, people are going to make a way. So, what I know for sure is that this work will continue. DEIA will not die. It may be called something else. I know when I left the Commonwealth of Virginia, that position, they took equity out and put opportunity. I mean, you could politically correct or not, you could call it whatever. The work will continue because humans have rights. Number two, there are laws that protect civil rights. There are laws that protect Americans with disability, the Rehabilitation Act. There are laws that protect women. There are laws in place, and people should understand that the executive orders are not laws. They are not. There are three branches of government. I know they all seem kind of blurry right now, but I want to continue to have faith in this balance of power. Right now, I can't really see the way, but we have to understand that there are laws. The executive orders are only statements that says these are the policies that this administration will run under. They are not laws. So there are laws that's going to protect. Where do I see this going? I think there's going to be a huge shakeup. And it's going to have us really look in the mirror, because some of the things that we are fighting against could have been and could be resolved if we can legalize some of the things that we've um, people have just kind of been scapegoating around. Let's just be honest. And so we have to ensure that we stay the course. And I believe if we think about the moral and ethical compass of humans, right? And then the corporations as well, like, where do you stand? Who are you serving? Your communities, your consumers? How do
Mhm.
you give back to them? Does it really matter? And for corporations to think about their return on investments, I hate to say that, but DEIA is a good business sense. So, yes, there will be a shakeup. I don't think that it will, you can shake a tree, right? When I used to pick pecans, we wanted to shake them in South Carolina, and the pecans that were ready will fall. And some things may fall off, but that tree, as long as it's planted and the roots are deep, DEIA is going to be here. I think we just have to find a way to just evolve. Change can be people can resist against change, but evolution, you can't change that. You cannot fight
Well,
against.
Dr. Hackett, I want to thank you so very much for those words. It's a great point to end on. As you know, this is supposed to be National Boycott Day. Like you said, people will make things happen, and we'll see. But I'm in. I'm echoing your belief. We've seen this happen over
I,
and over and over again, and America becomes more and more diverse, and folks just have to deal with it. So I want to thank you for taking some time to speak with us today, and just in your words, just letting folks know to exhale and,
it's,
and
it's
see where the pecans fall.
yeah, it's a bumpy road, but you know what? We're we're all built to survive, and so it's the survival of the fittest.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
All righty. Have a good day.